Jonathan?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight is Monday, July 26th at 6:30. It's time for the Board of Selectmen Highway and Sewer Commissioners meeting. Just want to let everybody know that Mr. Joseph is joining us remotely. Paul, could you please identify yourself?
Yes, hello,
Hi,
good
Paul.
evening.
Hi, Paul. All right.
Close enough.
Well, first order of business is always we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 2, the consent agenda. We have the minutes of July 12, 2021.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sullivan.
motion to accept as presented.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan. Do you have any second by Mr. Johnson? Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You?
roll
Oh, no.
call.
I'm sorry. Roll call vote.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Gary Siganovich, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Unanimous. All right. Item number 3, Town Administrator's Report and Performance Evaluation. So, 3I under that, the Town Administrator is going to announce some current board, committee, and commission vacancies. Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, let's start off with online licensing and permitting. So, Mr. Chairman, at 6:30 tonight, a post went out on the town's social media platforms that officially announced, and I wanted to do this with the board here and while we're in a public forum, that online permitting and licensing is now live, which means that residents and business owners can right now apply for a building department permit to include residential 1 and 2 family, commercial building permits, electrical, plumbing, and gas, class 1, 2, and 3 auto licensing, and liquor licenses, as well as food, alcohol, well construction, and waste disposal permitting. So that's now online. It's live. We had kind of a soft rollout on Friday. So that gives the applicants and permittees to track the progress of their application, track the progress of their inspections in a near real-time setting. And I say near real-time because we've ordered some tablets and we're waiting for the inspectors to be issued those tablets where they can actually go on site and in real time sign off or ask for more information and so forth. And that will immediately be transmitted online so that applicants can see that progress. We have the ability to upload required documents online so that when an application is received, the documentation that goes along with it can be provided as well, so the inspectors have a chance to immediately begin that reviewing process. And again, it's a 24/7, 365 platform, so those who go to work during the day, the contractors, the homeowners that want permits, if you're like me, they could be up at 2 o'clock in the morning applying to the town of Dudley for a permit. So that's something that we talked about during COVID, and I'm happy to announce that that's up and running. There's 3 different ways to set up an account. The first way, and the easiest way, is on a phone or tablet. You just hold your phone or tablet up to the QR code that's published online on Facebook. The notice will be up on the website with the QR code. All you do is simply put your camera on the QR code. It recognizes it and immediately brings you to the account. You fill it out and away you go. You can go to dudleyma.gov and there's a button that you can click on that says e-permitting and fill it out online that way. Or for those who want a little assistance or a lot of assistance, we've set up a kiosk at the counter in the building department. It's a 2-way kiosk, so somebody wants to show up if they're on their way home from work, they don't want to do it on their phone, or if they need a little assistance, they can go right to the counter. And there's a PC set up for them to use, and it's also set up in the reverse so that our staff on the other side can see the screen. They have the ability to help fill in information and help the applicant along. So positive development in terms of moving forward, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Item 2 is complete streets, which we've talked a lot about. but we've kind of had a little bit of a step forward this past week, the previous week. So I mentioned the Complete Streets program through Mass DOT in the past, and as the board recalls, in 2019, I attended the Complete Streets training at Mass DOT that was required. That training was required to make the town eligible to apply for Complete Streets grant funding through MassDOT. The program provides for grant funding for transportation, infrastructure funding, and it results often in traffic calming measures, street improvements, safety improvements for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other means of transportation. So as we continue to proactively work toward encouraging development, the natural side effect is increased traffic in all methods of travel. And I can tell you that without taking any sort of a study or a survey, I can see on a daily basis an increase over the last 5 years in the amount of traffic that we have on the town roads and so forth. So as we continue to develop, we need to proactively try to address some of that. So first of all, if the board recalls, you appointed the planning board as the Complete Streets Committee, which is required to put together a document with the help of Mass DOT and CMRPC, a project prioritization plan, which is this large spreadsheet that's in the back of everyone's packets tonight. I agree. So it's a culmination of the hard work completed by a planning board, which, as you may recall, like I just said, was appointed to the Complete Streets Committee. What began as some internal conversations between members of this board and me, and then several meetings between Bill Scanlon and I and CMRPC, have resulted in a Complete Streets prioritization plan. It outlines the rank of priority for each project, measured first by the local need and then by grant funding eligibility benchmarks, such as safety, ADA accessibility, pedestrian mobility, vehicular and freight operations, and transit access. It also estimates the amount of the funding request that would be required to complete each project, and it puts in desired construction start dates and timelines. So now we have something to point to when we go for grant funding in some sort of methodical order that was actually completed locally. So again, I want to thank Bill Scanlon and the planning board that, they put in a lot of time and effort and research that was necessary to come up with this plan. And it's a prime example to me of, a volunteer board that will, have a direct positive impact on residents and businesses for years to come. This is not an easy task to get something like this done. If you look at it, it's pretty safety oriented. I don't want to go over each one, but Dudley Oxford Road was ranked #1 at the Ramshorn Road intersection pedestrian improvements. I don't know how many times we've seen the field hockey team, the cross country team, dangerously running back, doing their practices up and down the streets. How dangerous it is and how dangerous our sidewalks are to support a regional high school the way we do, especially with those kind of extracurricular activities. So a project of that scope and scale would be a $200,000 grant request. Going down the list, we have, in order of prioritization, Mason Road sidewalk near the school. That's a 2-phase project. Additional Dudley Oxford Road sidewalk improvements. Here's one that I think is particularly interesting. Everyone tries to get to work in the morning. The first thing you do is you avoid Dudley Oxford Road during the school year, because trying to get past that Shepherd Hill entrance on both sides is a complete nightmare. So that's on the list. That ranks #7. There's a lot of kids that walk to school, so we're looking at a multi-use path to Shepherd Hill. West Main Street, Schofield Ave, Village Street intersection. This Airport Road connecting the college campus to the high school campus down to the center of town. So there's some really decent projects in here that I'm actually looking forward to see come to fruition. And again, that's all grant funded projects. that we're now eligible to request funding for.
Great.
It's really ambitious, but very well done.
Yeah, at least we have something to work off of, right?
Yeah.
Plan the work the plan, right? Subject to funds.
Starting with safety and working.
Safe.
Starting with safety and working
Safety.
back.
Excellent. Anything else on your report, Jonathan?
You mentioned, Mr. Chairman, volunteer boards and
Yes.
committees. So I want to take the opportunity to update and advise the board and the public about the vacancies that now exist on many of our volunteer boards, commissions, and committees. And over the coming weeks, I will be putting together a campaign seeking appropriate candidates for appointment and actively recruiting volunteers to serve. My thought was to, kind of showcase the work of some of these boards and committees and give those that may be considering volunteering a better look into what the positions entail, what their donation of time and experience and skill might mean to the community, short-term and long-term. So my thought was maybe, for example, the Historical Commission. What do you do on the Historical Commission? What kind of a time commitment is? What could the results of your volunteer work actually be? Kind of just showcase and highlight these different positions that are available and see if we have any takers. So I think that we'll do that over the course of the summer and start making appointments hopefully early in the fall. But I'll just read them off, and that'll conclude my report, Mr. Chairman. So current committee, board, and commission vacancies. On the FAA, we have one treasurer's appointment. That's an appointment made by the treasurer. One board of selectmen appointment. This is for the FAA. And 4 appointments available for the moderator. We have 5 vacancies currently on the personnel board. Those are all board of selectmen appointments. Capital improvement has 1 board of selectmen improvement vacancy. Council on Aging, we're still trying to figure out the final on that. It seemed like there were plenty of vacancies on there, though. There'll be more for that to come, Mr. Chairman. Economic Development Committee has 1 Board of Selectmen appointment, a planning appointment, and 1 alternate appointed also by the Board of Selectmen. Historical Commission, I believe, has 1 vacancy as of today, and that's a Selectmen's appointment. Agricultural Commission, 1 appointment. The Police Evaluating Committee has 3 Board of Selectmen appointments. So we've got a lot of positions available, Mr. Chairman.
We do. Board members, anything for Jonathan?
Mr.
Steve?
Chair, just as an aside, outside of these appointeds that we have, there's an joint appointment for the Housing Authority, right, to take,
It's an empty elected vacancy, I
which will just
believe.
be till the next election?
So we generally look for the Housing Authority to give us a recommendation, we make
Right.
a joint appointment.
If someone's interested in that too, it's a slightly different process, but, no, I said it before, I'll say it again. Excuse me. We would love participation from town residents. Some of these boards are great boards to get your toe in the water. And I ask, probably on behalf of the board, but I'll ask, just be serious. If you're coming forward with a letter or a request or an intent, come with good intentions. Don't come with your version of happy hour jokes and what you think people want to hear for a giggle. Just, if you want to come forward, we gladly will appoint you. Just be serious about it.
If you're serious appointment, Mr. Chairman, this is the type of work product that you volunteer your time for. This is gonna be a 10-year list.
If it all comes to fruition, in 10 years, your town will be a much better place. If
Right.
you have young children, you're going to benefit at the Shepherd Hill area. I mean, that's a perfect example from the administrator. That's the kind of, you want people coming forward with some vision and some input to the town for a positive end result. That's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Get involved. A lot of these committees don't have huge time commitments, but they do very important work. We need the help.
A lot of us started off in some of these committees. Kerry was finance, you were, Paul was Personnel, Police Evaluating Committee forever. Jay was involved before he got elected. I mean, if you want to get involved, these are great places to start.
Okay, anybody else? All right, thank you, Jonathan. Good updates. Paul, do you have anything for Jonathan?
I just want to add that over 35 years ago, I got my first appointment to a town committee, and it was the Police Evaluating Committee. And I just want to let folks know that that's a great committee to get involved in, to assist the police chief in hirings, in policies, that he may seek advice on. So again, it was over 35 years ago that I got my first appointment to that committee, and I would recommend it to anyone who has an interest in serving the town in a much-needed area.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Joseph. All right,
Make a motion to accept the administrator's report.
motion by Mr. Sullivan.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sigenovich. All in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, it's roll call vote.
Stephen
Thank you.
Sullivan. Aye.
Terry Sigenovich,
Paul Joseph, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Unanimous. Thanks, Jonathan. All right, item 3C. Town Administrator Performance Evaluation. So this is the part of, contractually obligated part of what we need to do for Jonathan to assign his final rating for fiscal year 21, which, yep, that's already over, which means we're late in doing this. So it's time for us to kind of do this and move on and start setting his goals for FY '22, which is now. So I think what we've done in the past is I've created a grid for each of the 5 buckets that that Jonathan has as part of his goals, and then we assign a numerical value based on exceeds expectations being 4, meets expectations being 3, satisfactory being 2, and unsatisfactory being 1. And we'll go selectman by selectman to get their scores for those and any comments that they have, which will go into Jonathan's review. So thank you guys for putting the time into this to get this checked off the list. Okay, so we'll go goal by goal. How about that? Paul, would you like to go first?
No.
Mr. Chair, so we're going to start off with Section C.
Section C is his annual review, and the first one is interdepartmental coordination.
Page 2, item 1.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'll go first on that one.
All right, you can.
You want to read the bullet points, or we're just going to, should we read the red bullet points? And then, or just do our responses?
Yeah, you can have the clerk read that. That's good. Yes.
Is that him? Oh, that's me,
That's
right?
you.
Interdepartmental coordination. Performance criteria listed. Town administrator regularly facilitates meetings between or among town departments where cooperation and planning is required for successful outcomes, communication, fiscal planning, situational awareness. 2, townwide policies are applied universally and consistently when appropriate to individual departments in a manner that supports the ability of leadership to effectively manage risk and for employees to understand expectations. 3, by working with an existing bylaw, proposing bylaw changes when appropriate, daily operational challenges are demonstrably more consistently and effectively addressed through a centralized operational and administrative structure. 4, department heads identify, initiate without coaching or direction of the town administrator interdepartmental planning and collaborative meeting towards achieving successful outcomes. I'll go first.
Go ahead,
My
Steve.
grade, I started doing the progress grades, but then skip right to annual. I put on this one exceeds expectation. I said he leads by example in coordination of all town departments, including but not limited to temporary layoff and furloughs to maintain and critical functions in the town. Also with uses such as kiosks, vaccination clinics, proactive vaccinations of local population, assisting and hiring Board of Health assistants. Again, The Board of Health assistants help with the kiosk, town meeting sanitization, Harrington registration, and COVID hotline. I believe most of that are initiated out of our office, and in my opinion, Mr. Ruda exceeded expectations in the face of probably the worst year any of us have experienced.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Goes down as a 4. Carrie, you want to go next?
Yes, I put exceeds expectations as well. I had a similar response to Mr. Sullivan as far as the coronavirus response and everything that went along with that. I did not list them out as you did. I was afraid I would miss a few. One thing that I noted as well with interdepartmental coordination was the cyber committee. I saw the emails coming in. You had different people from different departments in that. You did a great job coordinating that as well. And you made changes as needed, such as to staffing levels, whether it's to furlough employees or to hire new employees under the CARES Act. So yeah, exceeds expectations.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. 4. Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, I did 2 things. One was I graded on a 5.0 scale, and in addition to exceeded expectations. And believing nobody is perfect, there are times when Jonathan comes close. So in addition to exceeds expectations, I gave him a grade of 4.6 out of 5.
Yep. Okay, awesome, thank you, Paul. Any commentary for Jonathan? Like specifics, or that's it? Okay. Jay?
So communication is the key to running town hall. All the independently elected officials and boards need to work together for the greater good of the town residents, taxpayers, businesses, school system, and town employees. The organization of this communication often runs through the town administrator and his office. So, thank you for handling that, and that's the job, and thank you for doing it. So it meets expectations.
That's a 3. Thank you, Jay. And for me, my notes here. I also gave Jay exceeds expectations. The pandemic caused Jonathan to have to quickly pivot to activities that ensured the operations of the town continued. He worked extremely well with all teams involved, often with minimal or conflicting information from state authorities. His quick action and difficult decisions allowed Dudley to emerge successfully. And I've said this before, I said it again. I think Jonathan, as a town administrator, fairly new town administrator, has done more to push all these initiatives forward than anybody who's had this seat in a long, long time. So, Jonathan, thank you for that. 4. Okay. 2.
Mr. Chair, I should have noted too, the weighted of the grade was 25% on the first category. Second category, the weighted percent is 20%. Communication with the Board of Selectmen. The performance criteria. The town administrator shall keep the Board of Selectmen fully informed by A, responding to and initiating improved communication efforts. B, recognizing that any issue or change that directly or significantly impacts the community falls within the Board of Selectmen's authority to provide feedback. C, allowing the Board of Selectmen the opportunity to provide feedback on policy initiative changes before implementation. D, involving the Board of Selectmen in the determination of collective bargaining strategies for the current contract process and keeping Selectmen updated on its progress. E, ensuring that all Selectmen are aware of anything significant before it appears in the newspaper. Again, Mr. Chair, on that one I gave exceeds. I put down Jonathan's continuous updates concerning COVID-19 related issues, including CARES Act, operational issues such as remote work and staffing. Also, continuous updates, I put as an examples not limited to lease agreements over DMA, Stevens Mill, dam and stormwater management compliance, and green communities. as you just said, and I think it fits this category well, in the face of the pandemic, again, toughest year, all these initiatives stayed on track. As you said, sometimes limited or no input from the state where necessary. Jonathan continued to push the issues forward, and although we haven't resolved them all those things I just listed, most have been resolved or in the process thereof. And I just think, in conjunction with the chart we looked at before, I think that sums it all up. And I also, like I said, I gave him exceeds expectations.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Kerry, you go again?
I gave Jonathan a meets expectations on communication with the Board of Selectmen. I couldn't really find any fault, but, and I understand considering the pandemic, everything's difficult. I gave him a meets expectations on communication.
Okay, thank you, Kerry. Paul?
I gave Jonathan exceeds expectations. I can't imagine anyone, including Jonathan, to have communicated more regularly, honestly, and effectively to the Board of Selectmen than he has. So on a scale of 1 to 5, I gave him a 5.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Jason?
The town administrator communicates with the board, I'm assuming more often through the chair, as needed to ensure that the TA and the board are on the same page. I've very rarely felt surprised by something on the agenda, and I feel that meets expectations.
Okay. Me? I felt that Jonathan communicated with the Board of Selectmen very well, even though he had many extra duties placed on him due to the pandemic. I felt up to date and in the loop on all the key issues, which everybody has talked about here today. So I gave him exceeds expectations on that. Okay, we'll move on to number 3. Mr. Sullivan, you want to read that again?
Yep. Category 3, the weight of 25% is fiscal management. Performance criteria as follows. Town administrator plans and organizes the preparation of an annual budget, seeks alternative means such as grants, reimbursements, pilot funding, develops and prepares budget recommendations in conformance with public policy, plans, organizes, and administers the adopted budget within approved revenues and expenditures. Again, I put exceeds expectations. Some of the comments I had were, sounds like we're going to be repetitive in some of these, but the installation of the kiosk to assist the public in conducting town business factors greatly into the town's fiscal ability. The grant funding, town administrator had our administrative assistant assist by going to grant training. So Michelle was able to get grants for the town, and Jonathan, probably too many to list, has been able to get us on the right footing for certain grants, as we just talked about. The funding over and around the Stevens Mill, where we had people questioning the value of an expenditure, but the grant money and planning that we have has far exceeded what we had to pay out. So I think he's done a great job going outside of the traditional income expense that the town has had, and brought in extra funding, and worked well, I believe, with other department heads, assisting them with grants. So that's why I gave him an exceed expectation.
4. Thank you, Stephen. Carrie?
I gave Mr. Rudin exceeds expectations on fiscal management. If there was something higher, I would definitely have given that to him. I would use a 5 on Mr. Joseph's 5-point scale. He sought out grants, CARES Act, federal funds, state funds, and it's no secret here in Dudley we do more with less. And even with a pandemic, he still figured out a way to get everything balanced, everything done. Having served on the FAA, this is by far the most difficult budget season I've ever seen, and it wasn't difficult. I say that, and I know Jonathan's laughing to my left, and I'm not looking, but I know it was difficult for you, but you made it look not difficult. So definitely exceeds expectations.
Carrie? Paul?
Thank you.
Yeah, I gave Jonathan a low exceeds expectations, a borderline, but still exceeds expectations. Timeliness is important. Workload has, I think, prohibited him from meeting his own personal timelines, which I know are probably as exact, if not more so, than ours. So on the 1 to 5 scale, I gave him a 4.8.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Jay?
I'm sorry, 4.7.
1.7. Noted. Okay, Jay?
Town administrator has done very well in organizing the budget, encouraging grant applications, while meeting public policy requirements, and then even more importantly, then acting on the budget, even in a year following one of the most difficult in recent years. So based on that, I would say exceeds expectations.
High praise there. All right. Thank you, Jay.
7.3 on a 4-point scale.
That's the Russian judge.
Yeah. All right, my turn. So this is also for this one. Fiscal management. Jonathan had to make very difficult decisions while creating not one, but the last 2 annual budgets, which is how long it's taken us to get to this point to review him. They were thoughtful, well-balanced, and addressed everyone's needs. He successfully acquired and managed Federal CARES Act funds to ensure Dudley would be reimbursed for COVID-related items and many of the other items that everybody's mentioned today. So I give Jonathan exceeds expectations. Okay. Mr. Sullivan, number 4.
Number 4, 10% weight performance criteria. Town administrators shall develop specific recommendations for consideration by the Select Board to address ongoing challenges, to include A, compensation study 2019 implementation, physical security improvements including identification of funding sources, C, human resource administration improvements and policy updates, publication, advertising of board initiatives, for example, public awareness campaign of that year focused on DPW study committee. I did not check off a box on this one. On this one, again, I gave exceeds expectations. Some of the examples I used, like I said, we used them earlier. Complete streets, Stevens Mill, as people read the local newspaper or watch, the regional TIF district encompassing that area of town, CDBG block grants. I know Paul's probably listening to this one too. For years, we were told by previous administrators we did not qualify. Jonathan figured out that we do qualify, and that was part of the sewer infrastructure that's going to go on over there. Green communities again, which we talked a little bit about earlier, and also his participation in PFAS-related issues, which obviously was not part of his performance in the beginning of the fiscal year, but became a major issue in conjunction with water sewer. So again, I think those are just some examples, and again, I gave him exceeds expectation, and that's because of some of the things that weren't included in the beginning of the year that cropped up that still got handled.
Thank you, Steve. Carrie?
I gave him an exceeds expectations as well, because even though he had planned some projects, some others came on board unexpectedly, such as the coronavirus response. There were so many little bits and pieces to that just seemed to seamlessly happen, like the cleaning of the town hall, the masks, the hand sanitizer, all the little things here and there. And then this complete streets piece. I mean, how many times have people talked to us about Ramshorn Road, that intersection, the kids jogging by? Let me see what else I've got here. Recently, he spoke to us about the old corral up top being changed into a park. And that, I mention that because that isn't something that just came overnight. He does a lot of planning over time. It's not, he thinks of something this week and it happens next week. he puts things in motion knowing that it takes time to do. What's that called? Delayed gratification. And I'm sure he's got things planned that he hasn't even, or started to think about things that he hasn't even talked to us about yet. Another example, the cybersecurity. We got ahead of that before, right at the time when other towns were having difficulty with it. He got right on that, and we're still improving that. The compensation study, that was a great informative meeting and an informative document that we had. Again, exceeds expectations.
Thank you, Kerry. Paul?
Yeah, I grade Jonathan very favorably in this one. I think this goes hand in gloves. Yeah, hand in glove. Yeah, I think so. With the communication with the board, he's demonstrated ingenuity. He has communicated that well. I think he's exceeded expectations, and on my 1 to 5 scale, I give him a 5.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Paul. Jay?
Kerry really stole what I was gonna say. The town administrator has acted upon both open projects from, let's call it, previous administrations. The current plan, which has been presented to us several times, and then so many unexpected things that's needed to pivot through, get us through COVID, that I really feel like not a lot of the regular business suffered too much with those projects during one of the craziest years I can remember. So because of that, I would say exceeds expectations.
Thank you, Jay. All right, and me, think about it, right? Everything else kind of got put off to the side, but this, in my book, this is where Jonathan really shines. He successfully shepherded key economic development projects like DMA and everything that are vital for Dudley's financial future during this pandemic. He moved the ball forward on all fronts with all this extra stuff that he had put on his plate. So I want to underscore that the mill, all the things that we've been talking about that bringing forward. Also, like he talked to tonight about the online permitting, things like that. I mean, that stuff all had to get done, as well as make sure the town was informed, everything was staffed appropriately, everything was taken care of. So this is where I think we can all sleep well knowing that Jonathan knows how to manage a project. So he exceeds expectations in my book on that. Okay, number 5, Ms. Sullivan.
Mr. Chair, fifth and final, 20% weight is employee, community, intergovernmental relations. Town administrator, 1, shall model sound personnel procedures and practices and oversight of human resource functions. 2, lead, directs, and develops reporting town hall staff. 3, develops good staff morale and loyalty to the town. 4, recruits and assigns the best available personnel in terms of their competencies. 5, leads the negotiations of labor contracts representing town interests and board guidelines. 6, coaches and expects that an attitude and feeling of helpfulness, courtesy, and sensitivity to public perception exists in employees coming in contact with the public. 7, represents the town to the media as chief public relations spokesperson on town government issues. 8, maintains awareness, develops plans in other jurisdictions. Again, Mr. Chair, I put down exceeds expectations. Some of the examples I noted, he helped the schools with the Aid in the CARES Act funding for Dudley Charlton. And it wasn't just him, I understand that, but he led the town side in helping the schools, I believe, receive over $300,000 that they may not have got otherwise. In cooperation with the Charlton Town Administrator, which I know during the height of COVID, they were meeting at least once a week, if not more often, either in Zoom or over the phone. I said it before, but as part of the employee relations, he sent a town administrative assistant for grant fund training which resulted in several competitive grants, including but not limited to the Janet Mausel Trust and some cultural grants that Michelle was able to get for the town through that training. Again, like I say, repetition, but the PFAS coordination, and the example given there was a video. In the beginning, there was a little bit of resistance to the video, I think. And in the end, I think everyone involved realized it was a good move. And we thank the Water Sewer Commissioners, including Commissioner Sullivan, who participated, but I believe that originated through our office. He also in the course of his regular duties, our office had to handle numerous and often repetitive Freedom of Information request acts as required by law. We fulfilled our obligations there. Vaccine clinics as part of community relations. The town of Dudley, for a town our size, was well ahead of all communities, local. We were one of the first ones, I know Ms. Canoy is there, with we had the refrigeration equipment well before we even had vaccines. I mean, we coordinated with the Board of Health and the fire department to be way ahead of the curve. We were at the point where we were able to actually, as bigger cities were doing, go out into the community and find our shut-ins. I think all those factor into community relations, the intergovernmental. I think Jonathan leads by example. There's nobody in the town hall nor in the community that drives by that can't say Jonathan doesn't lead by example with his attendance. His truck is always here. Back when I was working, I'd be going home after 5 o'clock, coming up West Main, I'd see his truck. He'll tell you, I'd talk to him. I'd call and say, what is going on? Yeah, I'm wrapping it up. I'm like, Jonathan, it's 5:20. We'll just say 5:30. I mean, no one can say that he hasn't led by example. And I think that shows with the employees probably appreciate that Jonathan's here to help with any issues that may arise that he can deal with. So again, I gave him exceeds expectations in that category.
Thank you, Stephen. Carrie?
Thank you. With this, I again gave him an exceeds expectations. I wanted to touch on the community and intergovernmental relations. I think Jonathan's strength is the written word. When he puts something on paper, it's effective communication to just common folks that everyone can understand. And all throughout last year, he was communicating, whether it was to the people, whether it was through newspaper, the sign out front, various social media posts. The only thing he didn't use was a carrier pigeon, and I'm glad you didn't. But as Mr. Sullivan said, he models excellent behavior. And I know in comparing him to other things that I've seen in the news that other mayors or town administrators have done, he gave just the facts. He didn't throw a political spin in it. And I remember there was one, it was either a town administrator or a mayor who misspelled COVID and spelt it Corvid. That's something we never have to worry about with Jonathan. We don't have to worry about anything, but we don't have to worry about him saying the wrong thing. It's always effective communication to the community. Exceeds expectations.
Thank you, Carrie. Paul?
Yep. I also graded Jonathan as exceeds expectations in this area. This is an area that if he doesn't do his job well, then one misstep can get the town into deep trouble. Jonathan has not had a single misstep in this area. So he exceeds expectations, and again, on my 1 to 5 scale, I gave him a 5.
Thank you, Paul. Jay?
Creating standard processes where there are none requires great communication with the teams that do the work. Modernizing business practices is a must in the ever-changing world we live in, and the town administrator has exceeded the requirements for these items. If I go back and look at that long list of requirements, the one that jumps out at me the most is leads, directs, and develops reporting town hall staff. Well, there's a lot of people in this building that do not report to the town administrator, and that was not a reason for the town administrator not to help and make sure that the activities continued during tough times. So with that, I'd say exceeds expectations.
Exceeds expectations. Okay, thank you, Jay. And me? Jonathan has made major improvements in transparency to the residents. He provided weekly COVID case updates on the town's Facebook page, as well as other key updates everyone needed to be aware of. He has learned that residents use many different ways of getting their information. This is one of the things that, at his mid-year, which was more than a year ago, I had said that, we should really try to work on, and he really took that to heart and made sure that the important things, got out there, and he was the source of truth for people on important items. So, and just his intergovernmental relationships, he has relationships with the state rep, the senator, and beyond to really make sure that our needs are known at the state level as well. So, I gave Jonathan exceeds expectations. Okay, so, oh, I did that wrong. 2 3s. 6, 18.
3.84.
Well, did you weight them?
No,
Yeah, that's.
I'm just saying a number.
I was starting to weight everything. I realized that those buckets have a weight. 0.2. So let me. While you guys were talking, I was calculating. 0.4.
It's like you still are.
Jonathan's overall score based on, I'll read them off for the record. On goal number 1, you got a 3.8 across the board. A 2, a 3.6. 3, a 4. 4, a 4. And 5, a 4. So if you take their associated weights of 25%, 20%, 25, 10, and 20, and add them all up, you get 3.87 out of 4.0. So,
Mr. Chair, if I may,
yes, Mr. Sullivan?
that's a pretty solid performance evaluation. And, as you just stated, some of the categories were straight out 4s, and I was at exceed expectation on everything. And I certainly don't speak for everybody to say we don't think we have a perfect situation here. There's always room for improvement, but I think that this performance review adequately and effectively reflects the effort that Jonathan gave this year for the town of Dudley and leading, as Jay put it, his employees leading the team to what we had accomplished. So I think that was a very fair and outstanding performance review. Deserved every point he got.
I'm gonna check my math. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Carrie, any other final thoughts?
As Mr. Sullivan said, and I'll paraphrase that, this was a pretty solid review. I couldn't think of anyone I'd rather have in the position other than him. I don't know what else I can say, but that's, yeah, and I hope we keep this rating, how we're doing this the same way, the categories, the weighting, the line items, because I think this really, the more I looked at it, the more I read it, the more I heard the rest of you speak, the more I thought it really is an excellent summary of the position.
Thank you, Carrie. Paul, any closing thoughts on Jonathan's review?
I guess this means that we keep them, huh?
We do.
If he wants to stay.
Hold that thought.
Hold that thought.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I want to thank the board for the outlier rating and an outlier year, that's for sure. It's interesting that the one category that I thought I was going to score the lowest and was number 5, and it actually was the highest scoring category. So it's interesting how supervisors often have a completely different perspective than the actual employees. So Thank you for setting the bar to exceed my expectations.
Well,
So, Mr. Chair,
Sam? Yep. Okay, good, thank you, Jay.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
So next in the process, we as a board come up with action plan moving forward for Mr. Ruder, or is that, we give our thoughts to you at an open meeting and you would meet with him, or do we send you independent bullet points like to see addressed?
Well, on the agenda, Mr. Sullivan, it says, well, you signed a final rating. We have to vote on this final rating. And then we'll set a due date for us to discuss with Jonathan his goals and objectives for this session. Jonathan, do you recommend the best way to do that?
Yeah, I think maybe if we take a look at the current, as Mr. Siganovich said, the 5 goals and objectives, and see if there's anything we want to have remain the same, we want to tweak, we want to look at different standards of measure, we want to change the weights, we want to, that sort of thing. We can probably do that in a week or two, meeting or two. We'll put it back on the agenda.
Okay.
So,
Yep. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair, you want a motion then to accept the results of the performance evaluation?
Yep,
And you already read the results, so.
I did, and they were verified by the other engineer to my right.
So, Mr. Chair, make a motion that we accept the performance evaluation for Jonathan Ruder, fiscal year 2021, with a final rating of 3.87.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan,
Second.
second by Mr. Siganovich. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Kerry Siganovich, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
John Marcy, aye, unanimous. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, for all your help. And well, I'd like to think of a date. Do you want the next meeting, or do you want 2 meetings from now? I know August is kind of tough with vacations and stuff for some people, and
I want to make it clear before we even move on that there is the entire team here helped bolster up my rating. So I appreciate the staff. I appreciate my supervisors, but I especially appreciate the staff that helped me achieve this rating. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I also think that maybe we can put it on the next agenda. That gives us 2 weeks to take a look at it. See if there's anything we want to change on it.
okay, Michelle, can you make a note to send out a reminder so everybody, you guys have the template here. If we want to make tweaks to I think the buckets are solid. It's a matter of like if we can, quote Jay here, get some specifics on what we want to accomplish under those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's setting you up there.
Yeah, I don't see why, and this is not a town administrator thing. I don't see why any department heads, leaders of people, or even individual contributors shouldn't have, unless contractually allowed to avoid the process, shouldn't have a set of goals that make sense, that can be measured in a way that the person that's being reviewed is presenting how they did against those goals. I really feel this is an antiquated, backwards way of doing it, where I believe the evidence should be provided by the person being reviewed. Now, that's how it works where I am, and it wasn't that way. It's been that way for a good decade, and we were taught that process. And I'll tell you, it provides a great amount of self-reflection and humility when you have a set of goals and what metrics where they apply. Because God knows I love charts and graphs, right? Because it tells a story and shows a picture of all the good work you do throughout the year. And it's not about 5 guys trying to remember all the good work you did. Everyone will get the opportunity to present how well they did. And then, in the way the town works with elected officials is really wonky, right? The only way we're measured is if we win the next election, if we choose to run. But I think for professional staff, it's really an opportunity to, toot your own horn and show how well you did throughout the year, and really reflect on what you learned, because that's more about what the reviews are. What did you learn along the way? Become a better leader or individual contributor.
Well said, Jay.
I know that soapbox comes out only once a year.
Well, maybe twice, because we have his progress report, like you did your TA comments, I think, Jonathan, like, actually, fun fact, tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., I have my mid-year review with my boss, and I had to submit exactly what he just said to him, so.
Yeah, I had mine 2 weeks ago.
Yep. So it does help. There's some things that, they went well, things that I'm like, I could have been better at this because of X, Y, Z, just reflect like that.
Mr. Chair,
David.
I think.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, go ahead, Paul.
To echo what Jay has just said, and he said before in previous meetings, there's a degree possible. Goals and objectives need to be quantifiable. That makes it a lot easier for everybody.
Yep, it does. Easier to come, like you said, you don't have to remember all the things that he did, right? Right, Paul? Stephen?
Mr. Chair, reflecting on what Mr. Johnson said, he's right. Although in the absence of a personnel board now, all non-union personnel are required by bylaw to complete their self-eval before the department head completes their evaluation. And maybe we should take a look, as Jay just said, antiquated way of looking at it. Maybe we should, in conjunction with the administrator, because he is a contract employee, change the process, tweak it slightly to have him bring it forward to us for review, for evaluation. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody that's not covered by a union or contract is supposed to do a self-eval, because then it factors into the merit pool and any kind of raises. I know there was percentage raises given out previous, and some people didn't get as much as other people, and the previous administrator would take their self-eval and he would make his own determination. So maybe we should tweak that process a little bit, kind of go towards the model Jay was talking about, where he comes forward first.
Which is the way we did it at his progress review, that's how we
Right.
did it then.
But we didn't do it this way
We
this
didn't.
time. But it was a crazy year, and I think
Yep.
everyone accepts that.
Correct.
We also missed deadlines, so,
That's on us.
yes. So just food for thought as we go forward. You have conversations with the administrator.
But, yeah, I agree with that. And Jonathan, I think to that point, on the other side, on the goal setting side, if you could propose some of the major areas that we want to put on those, that'll help us as we add to it.
It could be as simple as, green and reds, right? You're on track or not on track. You have a plan for something, should be dates set around it. Gantt chart's an easy way to organize it. And we're gonna do these milestone activities to get this done and bring it home by the end of the fiscal year, or if it's a 2-year plan, whatever. And it's just a way to track it. So am I on pace or am I not on pace, and why? What am I gonna do to change it? I find that's pretty effective.
See item 8C. Good. Carrie, anything else to add?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Excellent.
Awesome. All right, guys, moving on. Thanks for that. Did our duty there. Item number 4, citizens' comments. Is anybody here in the audience who would like to speak on something that's not currently on our agenda? Seeing none. Item 5, appointments. We have the Zoning Board of Appeals, John Julian, with the term to expire June 30th, 2024.
Mr. Chair, is Mr. Julian present?
How you guys doing today?
Hi, Mr. Julian.
Good. I was on the zoning board of appeals for 3 years, had to leave on personal issues. George asked me to come back and be part of the board. I enjoyed it, so that's why I'm applying.
See that? Anybody have any questions for Mr. Julian?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I believe I was on the board when Mr. Julian was appointed last time. It would give me, with your blessing, great pleasure to nominate John Julian for a term on the Zoning Board of Appeals to expire 6/30/2024.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? Mr. Sigenovich.
I just want to share with everyone something that Mr. Julian wrote on this application. Reasons for wanting to serve. I love this town.
I do. I've been here 21 years. My kids went to Shepherd Hill. They, went on to greater things, and the chief. It's a safe town. It's a great town. So why not just be part of it? And if you can help, that's what we're here for.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Right?
You.
Any other discussion? We'll call that to a vote.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Jay
Harry
Johnson, aye.
Sigenovich, aye. Oh, sorry, Mr. Johnson.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Julian. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, next up.
I'm so excited to get him on.
We have the Deputy EMD Assistant Chief Paul Kanishna, term concurrent with his full-time appointment.
Mr. Chair, although we don't have that date, I will gladly make the appointment. Assistant Chief Paul Konechki to be the Deputy Emergency Management Director for the town of Dudley with a term concurrent with his full-time appointment.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Harry Sigenovich, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Unanimous. Thank you, Paul. All right, C. The Hazardous Waste Coordinator, Chief Dean Kochanowski, with the term concurrent with his term of his full-time appointment.
Mr. Chair, although the fire EMS chief is not here tonight, and now's a good time to pile appointments upon him. This is one he has before, and I'm sure he obviously would take back. So nominate Fire and EMS Chief Dean Kochanowski to be the Hazardous Waste Coordinator with a term concurrent with the term of his full-time appointment.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Joseph. Roll call vote.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Harry Sigenovich, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Unanimous. Thank you, Dean. And then, number 4, Jeff Murray, Highway Superintendent. He's going to be the tree warden with his term concurrent with the term of his full-time appointment. Mr.
Chair,
Sullivan.
it gives me great pleasure because 2 or 3 highway superintendents ago, I was glad we did it the first time. It gives me great pleasure to appoint Jeff Murray, tree warden, term concurrent with the term of his full-time appointment.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Harry Sigenovich, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Unanimous. Thank you, Jeff. Number 5, the Dispatch Center. We have Selectmen Executive Board appointment. Stephen Sullivan proposed. Raised his hand.
Yeah, plenty of time.
That's right here on the agenda.
Yeah.
He does have time.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Selectman Stephen Sullivan to the Dispatch Center Board.
Motion by Mr.
Second.
Johnson, seconded by Mr. Sigenovich. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Harry Sigenovich, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
I'm going to abstain from my own appointment,
And John Marcy, aye. 4-0-1,
but
Michelle.
I do accept it.
You do accept?
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Jonathan, do you want us to pick an alternate now?
If you would, please.
All right, well, I'll raise my hand to be alternate for that, because I just came off being on the executive board.
Mr. Chair, make a motion to nominate Chairman John Massey as the alternate to the executive board for the dispatch center.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Joseph. Roll call vote.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Harry Sigenovich, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Okay, thank you. Unanimous. And then we have capital improvement. We have a selectman appointment. Need a voting member under Mass General Law 10-1, Dudley, it's actually Dudley's general bylaw.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sullivan.
give me great pleasure to nominate Vice Chairman, Selectman Jay Johnson to be voting member of the Capital Improvement Committee.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Third.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Manny. Is that something you want to?
Yes.
Second? Okay, all right. Roll call vote?
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Gary Sigenovich, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
John Marcy, aye. 401. All right, and an alternate?
Mr. Chair, give me great pleasure to nominate Gary Sigenovich if he would take it as alternate.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Johnson.
Second.
Almost died. Died on the vine.
Roll call.
That would've been fine.
Roll call vote?
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Jay Johnson,
Paul Joseph, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Terry abstains. Should I voted on my appointment. I mean, I don't know if you
It's only an alternate.
All right, and now next, Tri-Epic. We have to appoint Jonathan Ruda, no expiration of term, concurrent with this TA appointment.
Mr. Chair, appoint Town Administrator Jonathan Ruda, no expiration of term, it's concurrent with his TA appointment to the Tri-Epic.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Roll call vote?
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Gary Sigenovich, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Unanimous. Thank you, everybody, for volunteering for those. All right, and the last one under appointments, we have to appoint one Curtis Meskis, the temporary building commissioner for pending permit application, review, issuance, and inspection at 68 Eagle Drive, David Durgan. Selectmen to vote or take any other action relative thereto. Mr. Ruda.
Mr. Chairman, there's a pending application at 60, well, two pending applications, I believe, at 68 Eagle Drive. The town certainly wants to get to the point where it can grant the application to any resident that wants to obviously improve their property. I think in this instance, there's a inability for our inspector and the applicant to see eye to eye. I think the best course of action for the town is to bring in Charlton's building inspector to review the application, make a determination on the application, and proceed forward with inspection if that's the way it pans out. This is a very unusual circumstance, but I think in this case, having a fresh set of eyes on it gives us a chance to get out of the loggerhead that seems to be at issue here. So that's my recommendation. That's based on a conversation with town council as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Chair, question and a comment probably, I guess. Question would be to the administrator, is our current building commissioner aware we're taking this action on this one issue only, and is he comfortable with it?
Yes, he is, on both questions.
Thank you. I guess it was a two-part question. I apologize. And my comment would be, in my 20 years as a planning board member, and a board of selectmen member, this is an unprecedented move. I understand the town administrator's explanation and rationale behind it. I loathe to set a precedent. I loathe to make it appear either inadvertently or unintentionally that we don't support our building commissioner and or any other town employee that's, as Mr. Joseph said at the last meeting, out there doing his job, especially in this circumstance under the personal loss that the building inspector recently experienced, and he still came to work within a week. It's a unfortunate I don't know if a set of circumstances is the right word, or right phrase I want to use. I am just, I'm not sure the proper word. I don't want to, it's discouraged. I'm just loath to set this precedent, because I don't want a person or an applicant who never came before us to express his frustration or his inability, as Mr. Ruda called it, at loggerhead. But, you know, we all have been copied on emails. We've all been copied on FOIs. But a person that would be so frustrated with a town employee and has not come forward to at least try to work with the administrator's office in person or with the Board of Selectmen, it's a dangerous precedent. It's a dangerous precedent in response to a situation that, if I'm reading everything correctly, it's not necessarily the town's fault that we're in this spot. So I agree with Mr. Ruda, I accept Mr. Ruda's explanation, but I had to get those comments on record. I loathe to let one person think they drive the bus, and if they don't get what they don't get what they think they want or deserve. And again, we're open book here. Kerry was chairman last year. I'm sure he would have met as an individual with the administrator, with any town resident that's having issues. So that's my feeling on it. I don't want to go much further down the rabbit hole.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Kerry?
Mr. Ruda, how much is this going to cost? And will this cost be borne by the town or by the applicant?
This cost will be borne by the town.
Okay. Here's my concern. As Mr. Sullivan said, that he's been here longer than me. He's been here 20 years and he's never seen anything like this, and he doesn't want to set a precedent. So going forward, if someone does not like an answer they get from some town employee, there is a precedent where we will appoint someone from another community and foot the bill. Now, if someone goes to the town clerk and they don't like the fee for a birth certificate or don't like something from water sewer or something, there's a precedent where we will appoint someone from outside the community and the taxpayers will pay for it. As it sits now, I'm not a fan. I don't think I can support that. I respect town council's opinion. I respect the work you've done, and I certainly respect Nelson. But as Mr. Sullivan said, this sets a dangerous precedent. I don't want to do that.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Joseph?
in apposition, not opposition, in apposition to what Kerry just said, this is an extraordinary circumstance and not brought on by the town. I'm going to vote for this. I'm not worried about the precedent, because I don't think we'll run into a situation like this again. This is an extraordinary case, and I want to go on record as saying that I'm going to vote for this. However, I support Nelson Burlingame as our building inspector 100%. Yes, I fully understand the need to do this.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Ruda?
I'm sorry, Mr.
Oh.
Chairman. I would agree. I wanted to give everybody the chance to we did wrestle very back and forth with setting any sort of a precedent. And I agree with what Mr. Sullivan says, and I agree with what Mr. Siganovich said. But Mr. Joseph is correct in saying that, you think of a precedent, meaning I don't like your answer, I'm going to go. I don't like what Mom said, I'm going to go to Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Not the case here.
Okay.
There would have to be such an, if this exact thing were to happen again, I would take the same action with other individuals the same way as I'm recommending now. A precedent, anything precedent setting, this is precedent setting. If we ever get this same circumstance again, it will absolutely be my recommendation. I don't think that's going to happen because this is an extreme circumstance that, as Mr. Sullivan said at the beginning of his comments, in all of his time here, it doesn't get to this point. It never gets to this point. And if it gets to this point again, this is the correct position for the town to take and the correct action to take, because the alternative is not a good one.
Thank you, Mr. Ruda. Mr. Johnson.
I believe I can support this one-time solution to an unusual problem. I agree with the town administrator in this case that, you know, problem solving, sometimes your standard work doesn't work, and you need another solution to move forward. But I disagree about whether or not this would be the same if this happened again, because it might be a unique scenario like this is. So,
Thanks, Jay. And, you know, people who don't follow the process, want to follow their own process, like then don't like the answer. Again, nothing was declined or approved. We hadn't even got that far. That's how bad it got for the people at home. And it's our duty as leaders of the town to make sure that we provide a safe working environment for our employees, and make sure, like you said, take it out and try something else, as Mr. Johnson just said. So I think we should do this, my opinion. So what is the board's pleasure on the appointment of Curtis Meskis, Charlton Building Inspector, for this one time? Mr. Johnson.
Second.
Oh, no. Well, I thought he raised his hand, sorry.
no, I was going to try to make a motion.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Jay.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Curtis Meskis, temporary building commissioner, for pending permit application, review, issuance, and inspection at 68 Eagle Drive, David Durgan. Selectmen to vote, That's the
Okay.
motion.
Motion by Mr. Johnson, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Joseph. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Gary Siganovich, nay.
John Marcy, aye.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sullivan.
I offer, with the board's pleasure, Mr. Ruda's agreement to meet with Mr. Ruda at a future date, soon, to come up with a process, if necessary, even involve town council, whereas I understand the building inspector, I'm using him as an example, has codes he has to follow. I would like to see if it's feasible for the town to come up with an internal policy that residents, if they feel they're being mistreated by an inspector or a town department, steps they have to follow before we get to this point. I mean, if there was an avenues, in this situation, there was other avenues that could be pursued, and apparently some were, but the next time it could be a different issue. But I'd like to come up with some kind of basic framework, whereas, for example, I'm making it up, step one would be apply for your permit. If you're denied, find out why. At some point, you should be able to come forward to the administrator or the chairman of the board, sit down with a resident, or at least give them that opportunity. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's something town councils we can't do. I'd like to see a process put in place to try to head off any situations similar to this that may arise. And I offer to meet with Mr. Ruda at some point in the near future to at least get the ball rolling, see what we can do.
I would say, Mr. Chairman, it's for the sake of transparency, there was a request for the personnel board's email addresses so that the applicant could file a complaint against our building inspector. The personnel board has no authority or jurisdiction over the building inspector. That complaint can and should be made to the appointing authority, which in this case is the Board of Selectmen.
Right, so citizens may not even know that. We have to have some kind of process where they can find out.
Yeah, should be clear.
You know, because this plays right into a person who gave us a letter about a year or so ago that wanted to be appointed to personnel board, and in that letter, this person said, I'm paraphrasing to almost a direct quote, I will be like Serpico going up the halls of the town hall to see who's working and who's not, to let them, so I can see what office is working and what isn't. People don't understand the functions of the town. That's a perfect example. That's a perfect example of someone writing a letter like that and actually thinking they should be on an appointed position in town. So I'd like to get a process in place where people understand the personnel board function, for example, is not to handle a complaint against an appointed building inspector. by the Board of Selectmen.
Good point. Jonathan, is this also, you're the hearing officer too, does that mean like give somebody a hearing to Steve's point? Like, on, if they had a complaint, would they come to you first?
Well, you could certainly refer it to me first. The board could certainly make that
Okay.
decision. Yeah, me take the first pass at it. It wouldn't necessarily fall within the hearing officer's scope, but it would town administrators.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I don't want to beat this to death. I had a great conversation with the highway superintendent today, and he may address in his comments. The brush mower's out there, it's cutting. You know, I went by an area that they completely whacked it to the ground about 3 weeks ago, but with the rain, it's back up there. And, you know, Mr. Murray's responsive to any concern, but the brush mower's out there on a path that's doing a section. Sometimes, yes, in an emergency, obviously, the police chief called, they go back and they fix it, but they come back and get it as part of their pattern. You know what I'm saying? So is that, if someone thought, I hate to use him as an example, that he wasn't being responsive, is that person gonna want to go to the personnel board and complain about him? I mean, they would need to know that their first step would be the immediate supervisor, town administrator, or come to a meeting and just say, hey, I got an issue. So that's my goal, if we can come to some kind of consensus.
I like it. Board members, any comments on Steve's proposal?
I like the idea because we can't expect every citizen to know every minute facet of how town government works. It took me a couple of years serving on a board to figure out everything.
Yep.
And for someone just going to work and bringing kids to soccer, there's no way they'd know. So I agree, a roadmap, steps, instead of just going to DEFCON 5 all of a sudden.
Right. I mean, and like I said, and this is the way we're trying to, get all parties involved, what they want. Okay, so that's why we did this here tonight. Okay. Can we move on? All right. Thank you, guys. All right, so item 6, we have a public hearing tonight. National Grid and Verizon New England, Inc., they have here for a petition for a joint or identical pole location on Foskett Road. National Grid to install one JO pole on Foskett Road beginning at a point approximately 170 feet southwest of the center line of the intersection of Dudley Southbridge Road. Install new stub 2-84 with anchor for pole-to-pole guy. The existing tree guy from P2 needs to be removed. I will open the public hearing at 7:59 p.m. Mr. Ruda. Oh, sorry. Is someone here from National Grid and/or Verizon? Oh, come on up.
Mr. Chair, as the applicant's coming up, I'm sure our administrative assistant has the answer. Was all the proper notifications given to
Yes.
residents? They returned the green cards? Okay, I just want to make sure. That's my first question. Thank you. Thank
Hi,
you, Mr. Chairman.
hi there, welcome.
Thank you.
State your name and where you're from for the record, please.
My name's Laura Napolitano, with
Lauren.
Worcester, Mass.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, apparently the tree that the existing tree guy was attached to has rotted and needs to be replaced, and we don't guy to trees anymore, so we need to install the stub pole to be able to support the existing overhead lines.
That makes sense to me. Okay, thank you. Anybody here, any other people involved here to speak on it?
Jeff, have a chance to look at it?
Jeff, have you had a chance to look at it?
Yeah, I don't have the issue. I've looked in the area prior to that.
Okay. Excellent. Board member comments?
I'm good with it.
Seems pretty cut and dry, Mr. Chairman.
Does seem pretty cut and dry to me. Mr. Joseph, anything?
No, sir.
All right.
Trees were rotting. we got
It's
them.
rotted, and that's probably the safety issue, exactly. With that's probably the quickest public hearing you'll ever see here. Is I'll close the public hearing at 8 p.m.
And before he hogs the credit, it was an easy public hearing. It's not the chairman that drove the engine on that one.
I didn't say I did.
Oh, what happens to the rotted tree? Can I ask that? What-
Yes, you can.
What happens to the rotted tree? Do you leave it there? Do you cut it down?
We would leave it there,
Okay,
because it's not our property.
okay. Just asking, because if there's a rotted tree,
Yeah, I don't know what, whose property the tree is on, if it's on town property, a resident's property. So, yeah, not aware.
private property?
Private property.
I was just asking, because if we've got a rotted tree, we kind of know if we
Yep.
got to look out for it in the future, that's all.
Yep.
Okay, board members?
I make a motion, Mr. Chair, to grant the request from National Grid.
Motion.
for Petition for joint or identical pole location, Fosket Road.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Oh,
Chairman,
yes, Mr. Joseph?
did you close the public hearing?
I did, at 8 PM, Paul.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote?
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Carrie Sigenovich, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Unanimous. Thank you for coming and waiting
That's
tonight.
unanimous.
Appreciate
No,
you.
y'all have a
Appreciate
night.
you doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, number 7, old business, actually got moved to new business. So we'll go to section 8. Board of Health, Police, Fire are asking for permission to hold a bike rodeo at the Town Hall on Saturday, September 11th, 2021, from 1 to 3. Jennifer Knoyer, Chair of the Board of Health. Are you chair again?
Yes, at this point, yes. Thank you for having me here this
Hey, Jen,
evening.
thanks for coming. What do we got?
So we are looking to hold a bicycle rodeo here at the town hall in conjunction with the police department and the fire department. We've reached out, Sergeant Dean Popowski has been working with us on this. We were looking to do it on Saturday, September 11th, from 1 to 3 p.m. here in the town hall parking lot. We would be setting up roughly about 5 stations that they could go through. Kids would come with their bicycles. We'd make sure helmet fits properly, that they have helmets. We're looking to try to get donations for helmets so that if a child comes without a helmet, we could possibly give them something. Go through some bike safety tips, for them, hand signals, rules of the road, make sure they have their bikes in good working order. And at the end of it, they'd get a little bicycle license, says that they've been through this, they have the license. And we're still working on some additional ideas. We'd like to have the fire department there as well, maybe see if they could bring something, kind of make it a little family fun, come through, get a little education. Our goal is, we'd like to do it this September, but then following, we'd want to do it in June before school lets out so that everything's fresh. We're just getting done with COVID. Now we can move on to other things, hopefully. So basically, I'm here just looking for your permission to hold it and advertise. It'd be a bicycle rodeo in conjunction with the police and fire. And here on Saturday, September 11th, from 1 to 3 p.m.
Mr. Sullivan?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Jen, I know Sergeant Poplawski's a big mountain bike rider. I see him on his personal vehicle. Do you know if he's gonna lead by example and have his
Absolutely.
own bike here?
I'm sure we can have that. Absolutely. He has his own bike here every day, if I'm correct.
He does. Very good.
Yeah. He's been a wonderful resource and, great to work with. So I think it'll be a good event.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Anybody have anything else for Jen? Any other questions? Chief, any comments since you guys are involved?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to Jen and her crew for bringing this back up. We had done one of these, I'd say probably about 8 or 9 years ago at the middle school, and all very successful. They had a chance to look over the kids' bikes. Some of the guys had made some even minor repairs to them if they needed to be done. But the biggest thing is to spread the word about helmets and things of that nature. We'll probably also be able to help register some bikes, because you'll notice that we can find some bikes that are stolen or whatever, or picked up other places. And if we can have the opportunity of getting numbers down, we can add them into our database. That way, in case we find a bicycle at some point up the line, we can reunite it with whoever the owner is. So we'll look for some different things that we can do for that. But great idea, and kudos to the Board of Health for doing all those things. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chief. Board members, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sullivan?
grant the request from the Board of Health Chair in conjunction with police and fire, to hold a bike rodeo in the town hall parking lot on Saturday, September 11th, 2021, 1 to 3, without a rain date.
Not at this time.
Okay.
Sorry.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan,
Second.
second by Mr. Sigenovich. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Terry Sigenovich, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
John Marcy, aye, unanimous. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chair,
Mr. Sullivan?
This would be, as the chairperson, as Jen said, this would be a nice community event, you know, and I don't know if it would grow to quite the level of our Christmas with Santa and Halloween, but at some point, maybe we can even get local vendors in town that,
That's what our
Pizza.
goal is for the future is, you know, we wanted to at least get it out there this year, start small, and we have some good ideas coming forward. We're just not sure if we can implement them in time, but we are also reaching out to some of the groups in town, like the Scouts and different things, to see if they want to come and participate, and then we would looking at eventually opening it up to more, making it a community day, something in the town.
Awesome,
absolutely.
awesome. Put out on the board and on Facebook, and so everybody's
Safe House
aware.
down here, maybe.
What's that?
Get the safe house down here, maybe,
Maybe the safe house at the same time? That's the chief,
at
yeah.
some point.
All right. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Actually, you might as well stay right there, too. Board of
wondering why she
Health
wasn't
also
calling
has
me
a Public Health Excellent Grant Program for shared services. It's an intermunicipal agreement, or an IMA, for local public health services. Mr. Ruda?
So, this was actually, the chair of the Board of Health can probably speak
All
to
right,
this.
Jen.
My recommendation is that the Board of Selectmen approve this IMA.
All right, Jen.
Thank you. So CMRPC has provided a $300,000 grant for the course of 3 years, and what they've done is they've set up communities where we are one of five other communities. We are with Brimfield, Dudley, Webster, Auburn, Oxford, and Southbridge. What it is it would be $100,000 per year. They're looking to hire a public health director and a health inspector that would fill in and cover these 6 towns, and it would all be funded by grant, so that when your inspector is extremely busy and doesn't have the time, or in our case,
Have an inspector.
absent, not having the time to be able to do everything, we could reach out to this health inspector, say, the Shepherd Hill Craft Fair. That's a big day for the health inspector when they have a lot of food vendors. They have to go up there that morning. Rather than pulling our health inspector from their limited amount of hours, we could reach out and say, on this day we have this going on, we'd like to use the health inspector for this service. It's providing services above and beyond what your health agent already provides. The public health director that they're looking to hire would be doing kind of like educational and outreach programs to all the surrounding towns and everything. CMRPC is looking for permission from the Board of Selectmen as well as the Board of Health to enter into this agreement. It does not cost us anything, again, because it is grant provided. So it is something that we feel, the Board of Health feels that it would be beneficial to fill in the gaps where they're needed.
Mr. Chairman, can I deconflict what everybody's wondering in their heads right now?
You don't even
Go ahead. I'm going to ask it anyway. Go
Well,
ahead.
maybe not that part, but the other part.
Yeah.
So we had an IMA that I proposed last meeting,
Yes.
which is shared services with Webster. This is a different thing entirely. This is a regional, more programmatic, health programs, getting the word out, public messaging, that sort of thing, versus the actual health agent, the inspector, the Title V inspector. That IMA that we tabled, pending my further discussions with Webster, has been sent off to council to be looked at.
Okay.
And then it's going to be presented again to the board. And again, it doesn't exceed any amount that we've budgeted for health agent services. So this is a different thing. This is an entirely grant-funded, programmatic-based service versus the actual local health inspection services.
Makes sense. Jay?
How many years would the grant cover us for?
3 years.
3 years. And is there any requirement for us to participate after the 3 years?
We can pull out at any time. If we find some reason we can discontinue, we can.
Grant
Excellent.
funded, so zero cost.
Zero cost, and we're going to have the ability to focus more on public awareness programs and that sort of thing.
So, I'm sorry, I think I had a bunch of questions. So it doesn't necessarily replace our need for a health agent.
No.
It
No.
would just be a pool activity sometimes that if we had to bring in someone.
Right.
We tried to go down that road through the chair to not have to pay for a health agent, but it's not gonna meet our needs.
Okay, Carrie?
I've got two things. One thing I saw here, on number 4, obligations of the municipalities, appoint a member and alternate to the oversight board. So each community will, I'm assuming, each community would have a voice in how the,
Right. So the reason why I've come before you tonight and to get this going is if we get in prior to the deadline, the Board of Health then appoints a committee member and an alternate, and we are involved in the hiring process, everything. We're from the we kind of ground floor up.
Nice.
So we'll have a say in everything that goes on.
and one more thing. Mr. Johnson had asked, is there any reason, anything that we need to do after the 3 years, is there any obligation? And you said no, unless we get out of it. Is there any reason we wouldn't want to stay in?
No, not in my, sorry, in my opinion, no. I think it's, especially we're a small town, we've always had a limited health agent. So this will definitely help us fill in some gaps when it's needed. I definitely feel.
Okay, Jay?
I guess that was my question. Could this replace that need?
We still will need our own health agent for the everyday, housing complaint but for those filling in and, if our agent is really busy, this person can step in and, like I said, do something like the craft fairs or.
So like a built-in backup, whereas communities that are out there on their own
Right.
with an 11-hour, I don't remember.
Ours, 12.
12-hour.
12-hour a week.
12-hour a week. It's hour 13 and you have some emergency need, right?
Right.
Okay, I got it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Joseph, anything to add?
No, sir.
Okay, thanks.
One more thing, Mr.
Mr. Siganovich?
So what do you need from us to help you fill in the gaps here?
Basically, I
Mr.
need your approval and permission to go forward with it, that you are, let me see the exact, requires a vote and a signature from the Board of Selectmen. The sample that he sent over was the wrong, there's several different community groups. I think he sent over the Northbridge one. I did ask him to send over the correct one. I apologize. He just, because there are, again, it's several small groups, which is good. It's not like we're in with 20 different towns. It's 6. So I need a vote, and then I will get you the correct one. I did ask him to send me, so I apologize.
Okay, thanks. My comment is it's good to have a backup. When we need it, we'll need it.
Absolutely.
If this last year has taught us anything. So what is the board's pleasure on this?
I'm good with this, Chair.
Mr. Johnson?
Is this just boilerplate? It says Northbridge. Is it just going to say Dudley?
It's just going to say Dudley, yes. It's the exact
Everything
same.
else will be the same.
Yes.
Okay. Do you need actually a vote of the board, Jonathan? Okay.
Yes.
Would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to allow the Board of Health to enter into an agreement for the Public Health Excellence Grant Program for Shared Services, intermunicipal agreement for local public health services.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Siganovich.
The chairman.
Any other discussion?
Just him.
Yeah.
Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Terry Siganovich, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Unanimous. And I assign this?
I don't know.
I know.
I'll make sure that we get the correct
You
one.
said that before. You said it
That's fine.
twice tonight?
Thank you very much, and just so you know, the host community for all of this will be Webster. That's where it'll be based out of, so it's
I was
nice.
gonna say, because Webster's not on the list.
It's
Okay.
very close, so that's good.
Yeah,
So,
that's the connecting town to Douglas.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah.
So do you want me to sign this or wait till a new one?
Wait till a new one.
I should have it tomorrow. Thank you very much, I
All right,
appreciate your
Just let me
time.
know, I'll come in and I can sign it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, guys. All right,
Tried to
next, number 3, we have approve Assistant Town Administrator position. Board vote to approve or take any other action relative thereto.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Joseph.
this is a 5-page document that I would like to have more time to look at and discuss with the town administrator. So therefore, I'm gonna move to table
Okay,
till our next meeting.
okay, motion by Mr. Joseph, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Chair, to the administrator and Chief Wayne,
No, this is the.
Oh, I apologize.
job
I
description.
apologize. Sorry. My bad. Take that back. You don't need to know nothing on this vote.
Okay, roll call vote.
Sorry.
Paul?
Paul Joseph, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Very straight now, Joe.
John Marcy, aye. Okay, we'll pick that up next time. All right. Next, Board of Selectmen to vote to accept all ARPA, American Recovery Act funding for the qualifying uses as recommended by auditor. Mr. Ruda.
Mr. Chairman, a discussion with our auditor this past week, last week, he recommended as part of compliance that the board take an official vote to accept and use all money received under the ARPA funding. That's a federal fund that we have been discussing for a few weeks now. We have an initial deposit in the bank. For auditing purposes, he recommended that the board take an official vote to accept and allow its use for all qualifying purposes. So that when I begin to spend it, which I already have, I've got some cover from the board.
Yep, no, makes sense. Board,
Good with it.
okay?
You want the motion to read? So moved, Board of Selectmen to vote to accept all ARPA, American Recovery Act funding for all qualifying use as recommended by the auditor, put forward by the town administrator.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Gary Sigenovich, aye.
John Marcy, aye. Unanimous. All right, one more under new business.
Good.
Richard Carmignani Jr., Richard A. Carmignani. Vote on interim loan notes, Mass Clean Water Trust. Mr. Treasurer, Clark.
Hold on to your seatbelts, here comes another fun one.
Oh, we gotta read stuff?
Here we go.
Who's the clerk?
Sully.
I have to read this?
You do.
Oh, this is what you did to you?
No wonder he's smiling tonight.
I'm gonna run to Wendy's, anybody
Make
need
a
it?
motion, we reorganize?
Would you like me to read it?
I'll do it. I, the clerk of the Board of Selectmen of the town of Dudley, Massachusetts, certify that at a meeting of the board held July 26, 2021, of which meeting all members of the board were duly notified and at which a quorum was present, the following vote was passed, all of which appears upon the official record of the board in my custody. Voted, number 1, that the town shall issue bond or bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $5,225,000, parentheses, the water bonds, pursuant to Chapter 29C and 44 of General Laws, and a vote of the town passed June 22nd, 2020, Article 16 for planning or construction of drinking water infrastructure, the water project. 2, that the town shall issue a bond or bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $1.3 million, the sewer bonds, and together with the water bonds, referred to as the bonds, pursuant to Chapter 29C, 44 of the general laws, and a vote of the town passed June 22nd, 2020, Article 17, for planning or construction of sewer or other water pollution control abatement infrastructures, the sewer project, together with the water project referred to as the projects. 3, that in anticipation of the issuance of the bonds, the treasurer is authorized to issue an interim loan note or notes, the notes, from time to time in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $5.225 million with respect to the water project and $1.3 million with respect to the sewer project. 4, that each bond or note shall be issued as a single registered security and sold to the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust, the trust, at a price determined pursuant to the financing agreement. 5, that the treasurer is authorized to determine the date, the form, the maximum interest rate, and the principal maturities of each bond and note, and to execute a finance agreement or agreements with the trust with respect to the sale of the bonds and notes. Such date, form, and maturities, and the specific interest rate or rates of the bonds and notes to be approved by a majority of the Board of Selectmen and the treasurer, and evidenced by the execution of the bonds or notes. 6, that any certificates or documents relating to each bond and note, collectively the documents, may be executed in several counterparts, each of which shall be regarded as an original, and all of which shall constitute one and the same document. Delivery of an executed counterpart of a signature page to a document by electric mail in a .pdf file or by other electronic transmission shall be effective as delivery of a manually executed counterpart signature page to such document. And electronic signatures on any of the documents shall be deemed, shall be deemed original signatures for the purpose of the documents and all matters relating thereto, having the same legal effect as original signatures. 7, that all action taken to date by the town and its officers and agents to carry out the projects and the financing thereof, including the execution of any loan commitments or agreements by the treasurer, are hereby ratified, approved, and confirmed. And 8, that the treasurer and the other appropriate town officials are each hereby authorized to take any and all action necessary or convenient to carry out the provisions of this vote, including execution and delivery of the financing agreements and the project regulatory agreements relating to the projects. I further certify that the vote was adopted at a meeting open to the public, that no vote was taken by secret ballot, that notice stating the place, date, time, and agenda of the meeting, which agenda included the adoption of the above vote, was filed with the town clerk, and a copy thereof posted in a manner conspicuously visible to the public at all hours in or around the municipal building that the office of the town clerk is located, or, if applicable, in accordance with an alternative method of notice prescribed or approved by the Attorney General as set forth in 940 CMR 29.03 subsection 2 subsection B, at least 48 hours, not including Saturday, Sunday, legal holidays, prior to the time of the meeting, and remain so posted at the time of the meeting that no deliberation or decisions in connection with the sale of the bonds or notes were taken in executive session, and that the official record of the meeting was made available to the public promptly and remains available to the public in all accordance with general laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18 through 25, as amended. I further certify that the vote has not been amended, supplemented, or revoked, and remains in effect on this date. If passed, the date would be July 26, 2021. Stephen Sullivan, clerk to the board.
Sign it, please.
Clerk of the board,
I,
not to the board.
Okay?
Michelle, I have the originals to sign and to be sent out.
Okay. You want to,
You'd like to vote in the affirmative, and then we'll go through the signature pages.
okay?
You have to sign this up there, that one doesn't count.
I was going to count.
Make a motion to
Practice your
accept the,
signature.
I was going to do that here.
make a motion
Hey,
to,
Law,
Hang on, go ahead, Jay.
make a motion to accept the interim loan notes for the Mass Clean Water Trust as read.
Motion by Mr. Johnson,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Sigenovich. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Gary Sigenovich, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Vincent Thomas, no.
I think that was aye.
Paul?
No.
You gonna,
Abstaining?
Change your vote?
go ahead.
Yes.
Paul Joseph, aye, there it is. And John Marcy, aye, unanimous. Okay. And then Richard will bring us stuff to sign.
No, that's nothing. He's got
You've got all the official.
the different
I was
colors.
supposed to memorize that,
Yeah.
stand at the podium and read.
If I walked,
This-
I'll get it.
I walked to the podium, I would kept going out the door.
Coming.
Sign one of each.
Sounds like each.
Whoa. We're all signing it?
Yep.
I was walking to the podium, I was walking out the door.
We're almost there.
I thought I was out of time when that thing went off.
I know.
It's like Jim Valvano, that red light's blinking, they want me to stop talking. Am I supposed to use black ink or does it matter? I just use green.
Oh, no, I've got.
These two are just for Sully.
Just for Sully?
As clerk.
Just for Sully?
Yes.
Just those for you.
Respect that.
Taking my mileage, no? It's not for me, it's my wife, you understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Did you execute this document too while you're on it?
Oh.
Give that to Mr. Marcy, he's the only person to sign it. No, not yet. Maybe after.
What am I signing? What is this?
That's my evaluation.
Oh,
Yeah.
What do you mean you just gave me an 8% raise?
I suppose-
1% in the interest
Am I
of
just-
transparency, Mr. Sullivan. 1%.
3.87.
you just wanted me to initial it or sign it?
Sign where it says manager with a big X on it. Please.
Yeah, I have a long name. Okay. I didn't check any of the boxes. All right. Rich, all set with that?
Thank you. Appreciate everyone's patience. A little bit of compliance goes a long way. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you. All right, item 9, board member comments. Mr. Johnson?
I'm good.
Mr. Joseph's good?
I think
Terry?
Byron and I say we're wrong.
I think I'm good.
Steven?
Mr. Chair, I just want to wish, hopefully everyone's been having a good summer. It's obviously been a lot of rain, it's been some less than desirable weather. I know Jeff's guys are out there doing the best they can. I know a lot of days it's a limited staff with vacations and whatnots. And I just like to ask people, when I walk my dog or I take a walk in my neighborhood and you come across a catch basin that may be a little bit blocked from overflowing rainwater, take a second, especially if you're on a slope, just drag your foot, try to move some of the debris out of the way. I know Mr. Murray's guys are out there doing the best they can, but if we can help keep some of those catch basins open, there's always gonna be low areas in town that flood and is ongoing battle, but in your own neighborhood, if you have a chance to do something to help make your street or your neighborhood a little bit better, please take it's like snow blowing the fire hydrant. You know, you hope you never have to need it or use it, but just kind of push the stuff off the top of the catch basin. If it's downstream, let it go with the next rainfall, but just try to keep your neighborhood clean. And we haven't had a say in a while. The COVID vaccine isn't gone yet. As we see in the news, some communities with this Delta variant. Again, I know it's a personal choice. I chose, please consider the vaccine. Excellent example over the weekend. I was watching one of the news shows, And somebody made the comment, if people didn't take the polio vaccine, we still have polio. That's the only way you can look at it. I know it's hard in the moment, but COVID's real. Look at Provincetown. Look at some of these other areas. Just continue to practice. Check on your neighbors, the elderly, the shut-ins, and we're close to the other side. Hopefully we can push through. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Jay? Okay. And I don't have anything additional either tonight, so we'll move to Department Communications. Jeff?
So just a couple things like Mr. Sullivan had mentioned. We've had some extremes with the weather. A lot of rain. It's been pretty difficult to keep up with all the brush mowing on the edge of the road. We've had some service issues with the equipment as well. That's kind of plagued us. So we're doing our best. I encourage residents to. I've gotten several calls if people have concerns about any of the service-related issues with visibility and that type of thing. We respond to any of the calls. Unfortunately, they're out there doing a route. They can't necessarily react on a call-by-call basis to go to certain areas at any particular time. But we do have a great deal of roadway to take care of, and it's again because of the rate of growth, it's been difficult to keep up with. Also, on another note, I've had several calls about some dangerous trees. We've had issues with, routinely, again, with the weather. Overnight, we've had calls by the police. I've had to call guys in and come in and do cleanups. I had one earlier this evening over on Mason Road. There's a large tree I've gotten several calls about over on the corner of Mason Road Extension and Hayden Pond. There was some indication that it had some historic significance. An email had gone out to the Historical Commission. Ed Besnet responded, and the intention is to take the tree down. I wanted to make sure that we made a proper notification as far as that's concerned, so that we wouldn't have any issues after the fact. So that's been posted, and there is a current list that we're running off of, and we'll have the contracted tree company out there taking care of several others that are out in the area and limbs. Also, as an update to the Brandon Road Mill Race Bridge project, we had a conference call the other day, or actually a Teams meeting with Brian Brenner from Ty and Bond. We're looking into alternatives as far as what we can do to try and solve that issue, even on a temporary basis. So there's the state actually has a program where they have several deck bridges that they had from the Boston projects.
The Central Artery.
Yeah, the Central Artery project. So they have those in inventory in, I think it was, what was it, Braintree?
I think it was, Braintree.
I think it was in Braintree, but in any case, they do have some deck bridges, which would give us a temporary solution while we seek funding to come up with a plan for full replacement. There are other alternatives as far as a shorter long-term lease or purchase of a lattice bridge that may be prefabbed. There's a company that they deal with that provides these. So we're exploring all those opportunities, even from a standpoint of the environmental impact and that type of thing. So I'm pretty impressed. They jumped on this right away. Ty and Bond is really digging in, and they're experiencing the same thing as we do this time of year with vacations. So we're diligently working at that to try and come up with a solution, and hopeful to solve the problem for us and the neighboring Webster issues that they have for concerns. So, and that's about it.
Mr. Chair, through the administrator and Jeff, somebody was talking to someone who lives in that neighborhood. A couple of years ago, remember town of Webster really did a PR campaign. They got the railroad tracks repaired on Main Street and North Main. They never got them repaired on Hill Street. Since traffic's gonna be non-existent, can you reach out to Webster, one of you folks, and find out exactly how they got the railroad to move, and maybe they can work on that section when there's no traffic? I mean, they'd have to do something about the trains, obviously, but they did more than those two crossings. That was just two they did in Webster. They fixed the one in Oxford Center. I mean, Hill Street's bad. There's like 3 or 4 inches on the track,
Yeah,
you know?
it's-
So just, maybe you can just reach out to those folks and just say, hey, you know, how'd you get pressure on them to fix it last
Sure,
time?
yeah, I'm sure they have representatives with the railroad that
Yeah, I don't know if it's P&W maybe or
reach
whatever.
out. Yeah, I'm not sure who owns that rail.
Yeah, so the person lived over there, they still walk, and the lady said to me, gee, how come they can't fix that like they did that? And I said, that's a damn good question. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay,
Jeff.
Thank you.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not very much, but it's been busy the last month or so anyway. So hopefully that calms down a little bit. But one thing we did last week, and I think I sent you all a press release on it, was something unique, was Phil Magus, our school resource officer, did a Lego clinic up at the high school. He got asked by the athletic director up there because they're looking to do some different programs. So he participated in that and was really very well received. I think you might have saw some of the pictures that we sent around about some of the projects the kids did. So just another one of those little unique little programs that are out there and about. So probably be something in the Times coming up this week, but just figured I would throw that out there for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. George?
George, looking sharp tonight. Yeah. Play 18 today?
With the grease comes trying to brighten up a little bit. Just to let you guys know, the infiltration, the I&I program is on board now, and you'll see the trucks around town beginning the process, relining pipes. It's going to take a few months to do, but we're off to a good start. As you know, during that storminess, we had some issues with the sewer. We're going to hopefully see if this helps that situation. Plus, we're also going to be working with Nichols College on identifying some other areas up there that have given us trouble with infiltration. Our station at Tanyan Road went into overload because of the amount of water that was getting into it. And we found, in talking with some of the people up at Nichols, we think we find areas up there where the manholes are actually cracked and water is getting through. So we're going to go through a complete process of evaluating that college area to see if we can tighten up some of these problems. So hopefully we'll have a better situation next time.
Mr. Chair, quick question.
Yes, Steve.
George, I got a text on my way here. The Mason Road project, moving right along, obviously. Are you waiting to patch, to cover the trenches all the way up?
Yeah, we either going to do them sections, or we're trying to let people, let it run over to get down as much as possible. But they will eventually be everything be cleaned up, and they'll be paving it down. But right now, they're going to be putting in the services as they go up too for the houses.
Right.
So everything's going to get disturbed for a while there. Hopefully, it hasn't been too much of an inconvenience for people. They're doing the best they can, and they are moving pretty fast. So we're lucky in that respect. So
It was funny, the person actually said to me, the rain was great because it kept the dust down.
Mm-hmm.
And then today we had no rain, and they were not mad, but the dust. They just want to know if that's something you're going to do all at once because it's easier.
yeah, they've usually been watering it down themselves as they go and trying to keep the dust down and stuff. So, but like I said, the weather's been good now, so they hope to get a good start, and they hopefully don't get any big piles of rain coming up in the future, so we can get things finished up. Thanks.
Thank you, George. Rich, anything else?
Tax bills due August 1st, be Monday the 2nd there. Yeah, I know, just rainbows, unicorns, all over the place. Wrapping up FY 2021, doing our workers' comp audit. Much as we're no longer with Mega, each year is auditable. Moving forward, hopefully we move the mod down. We're well into our first month with the new insurer, new rates. I'll laugh. I'm going to get a call again this week. Anybody who has our insurance, get something from CVS Caremark. Again, we have Blue Cross Blue Shield for our health. There is a prescription drug benefit card under CVS Caremark, which of course works at CVS, but it also works at Price Chopper, Walmart, any other retail pharmacy. And this is my plug, 2 plugs. We want to make sure that anybody who works for the town of Dudley who is taking a maintenance medication, this is the time of year where I ring the bell, get your 90-day supply. We don't buy insurance. We have an insurance run through a trust. So anytime we can save money by not going through a retail pharmacy, we save money. So look at your prescriptions, even if you're not on the town's insurance. You want to take a look, can I buy this regularly recurring prescription at the mail order rate, and it's going to save someone money. Hopefully it saves the town of Dudley money. Also, the wellness benefit, part of the Hampshire Council of Governments Insurance Trust, Michelle Camosa goes through and has wellness programs. The whole idea is that once a year you go through and participate in the benefit challenge. It is rewardable, if that's a word. You complete the challenge, you go through and you get $100 for it. It's for the subscriber only. It's for awareness. You want to make sure that you have your tobacco cessation affidavit. You go through your monitoring body weight. You're going through and learning about how heart disease is linked with bad dental. Anyway, I have that. I'm going to get a flyer out to make sure that everybody in the town of Dudley who's on the insurance is participating in the Wellable Challenge. It's nice to get a $100 gift card, but in the long run, you're doing something healthy in year 1 and reinforcing it in year 2. So after half a dozen years, you are healthier and you live longer, because we'd like to keep you all around. All right, thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Rich. All right, good. Like, the next item is executive session and adjournment. Mr. Joseph, would you like to lead us into executive session? Because you're really good at it.
I don't have the Mass General Law in front of me, so let's let someone else do it.
Okay. How about Mr. Johnson?
Read it as is.
Yep, read it as is.
Make a motion to move to convene into executive session under MGL Chapter 39, 23B for the purposes of actually conducting contract negotiation with non-union personnel, town administrator, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, TA update status if required, SEIU 888 local, and to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, police lieutenant, not to convene an open session.
Motion by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Joseph. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Johnson.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Terry Siganovich.
John Marcy, aye. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks for watching.
We got to call Paul back.
Yeah.